Since I was a kid, I wanted to make movies.
I love the writing process because you can go anywhere with it.
I've always been interested in the acting aspect.
I just have like so many stories to tell myself.
There's a lot in me, a lot of creativity.
I see a lot of things happen in my community that I believe should be spoken about.
Many people are going through this every single day.
Bullying, poverty, racism. Wake up, people, like something is going on.
Every new voice counts and matters.
Every idea, every story starts with a spark, a tiny light that glows. But to speak up, to be heard, to innovate takes courage. We're here to ignite that tiny spark. We're here to foster Canadian voices, our narratives, our ideas. We're here to spark courage. Our logo is a showcase for our culture, our storytellers, our innovators, and it reflects our creators and communities. The Spark is a catalyst to push boundaries, to drive the future, and for Canadian voices to be heard on a global stage.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Feature Film Showcase 2021, presented by CBC GEM. My name is Zareen Bushra, and I'm the Director of Operations this year, and I, along with the FOFS team, would like to thank our public funders, Telefilm, the Government of Canada, and the Arts Fest Business and Arts Program. Today, we are pleased to present In Conversation with Evan Goldberg, co-presented by Real Start and TIFF Next Wave, and moderated by Radheyan Simonpillai. This program will be available to view on fofs.ca. A full list of our industry programs, workshops, and events can be found at fofs.ca/industry. Thank you for being here with us today. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Evan Goldberg and Radheyan Simonpillai.
Thank you, Zareen, for that introduction, and thank you to the Future of Film Showcase for having myself, and Evan Goldberg here. Evan Goldberg, I don't think he needs too much of an introduction. He's a prolific writer, director, and producer. He's half of a famous Canadian duo. It's Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen. They're the team behind Superbad and This Is the End, and Sausage Party, Preacher, Television Like the Boys. And Evan is also a co-founder of the Real Start program, which is a mentorship program developing young talent, particularly from underrepresented backgrounds. And I am absolutely thrilled to be having this conversation with you, Evan. How are you?
Good. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, look, we're here at FOFS. We're celebrating the future of Canadian talent. And I guess, the starting point, I think I'd like to go back to a couple decades ago when you and Seth were kind of the future of film, so to speak, right? Like, let's go back to when you were a couple teens in a Volvo writing a script that became Superbad, right? So can you walk us through how you got from that Volvo to making that first feature?
Yeah. It was my mom's blue Volvo, and Seth also had his grandparents' brown Volvo. Volvos were big then, I guess. I don't know if they're still as big. When Seth and I were young, I went to like a Jewish after school, and he went to a Jewish day school, and we would see each other at the end of the day, and we kind of like loosely. So I was like, oh, there's the loud guy from that team, and I'm the loud guy from this team, and we eventually met in bar mitzvah class where we trained for our Jewish 12 years old coming of age ceremony. and they jammed the classes together, and we just hit it off, and we realized we both loved writing. He liked to write stand-up, and he had begun a stand-up career at the age of 12, which is bonkers. And I loved writing like short stories and poetry and like songs and stuff like that. And I can't play any songs, I would just write them. And we just like developed this love for writing together, bonding over comic books largely, which back then were not so cool. Back then it was like a niche nerd thing, and film, of course. And no one else in our high school really had the same interest. And so we just kind of were like forced together like magnetically. And we watched we would get 7 movies for $7 a day from a cheap movie store, and we would watch them in a weekend together because girls were not that interested in us. So we thought we should do something, probably watch some movies. And eventually we just realized that most of these movies were absolutely terrible, but every now and then there was a great one, and that a lot of the great ones were not necessarily the most expensive ones. And it just hit us that maybe we could write a movie. And we also had this added benefit, 2 added benefits. One is we went to Point Grey Secondary in Kerrisdale in Vancouver, where they filmed a lot of stuff. And also the X-Files was always filming around us because Vancouver is a film town. And so we had that in front of us. We would see it, and we would see the people on set and see that they just looked like us. And it made us motivated to go and give it a shot. And then also just being from Canada, a place that treats cinema with reverence in some ways that a lot of other places don't, a place that considers it like a part of the culture, especially personally. I like the National Film Board's app, and I love looking back at the things it's created, and the animated stuff that Canada had created back when in my childhood was very impactful on me and really inspired me down a path of animation. But yeah, I think just like culturally and situationally, and very much just by having fortune and privilege, we stumbled towards the right path together and tried to write a movie. And that movie was Superbad, was the first thing we ever tried to write. And the first draft was awful and embarrassing. And I found it recently in my mom's in a box, and I don't want anyone to ever see it. But that was the beginning. And for 10 years, we worked on that script as Seth eventually got a role on Freaks and Geeks. And that kind of started our career. He showed it to Judd Apatow, and Judd took a chance on us. And slowly but surely that became the beginning of our career.
You know, sorry, when you were recounting that experience of, you know, you guys renting 7 movies in a weekend and realizing that you could aspire to write your own thing, it took me back to, I mean, I imagine you were a young teen, early teen when Clerks and Tarantino started coming up.
I almost mentioned Clerks right there. Clerks was the thing where they spent like $6,000 on this movie. Like if we all worked our butts off for 3 summers in a row, we could afford to make Clerks if we borrowed my dad's camcorder. And then Pulp Fiction was the other big movie for us. So you hit the nail on the head with both of those.
Yeah, but I mean, because it gave you this confidence that all you had to do is watch a lot of movies and have a little bit of money, and there was enough ingenuity at that time, I think, right? To where you didn't have to make the studio movies that was, I mean, I guess like that. So it's interesting to now realize that, yeah, you guys are kind of kids of that wave of independent feature production, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and especially like Kevin Smith, very specifically, like if he didn't exist, we wouldn't exist. That guy showed us a path to, and Superbad did turn out to be a large studio film, but that's not how we conceived it. And actually at the time it came out, it was very bizarre that they did that with such a small film. It was kind of the first film of that smaller scope to be treated in a larger way. But it was initially intended to be shot in Vancouver. We had to change it. They made us change it. It used to be Vancouver. The studio was like, America, guys.
Do you think the same is still like the same would still happen now, where it's like, you know, back then they didn't want it to be in Vancouver? Do you think they would still feel that way now for a studio movie? Because I feel like there's more content. They're like, okay, it's in Toronto.
It's a mixed bag. Everything's different now. It's all about the finances and then the math they're running, and like the simplest answer is if financially it made sense, they would do it, and if it didn't, they would fight hard against it. But now all the major studios and the streamers are opening up their own like country specific groups, and so I think the whole game's changing. There's going to be a lot more things that are not American happening in the future.
Yeah, well look, I mean, like you know, when you recount your story, you're developed. Okay. Not everyone needs to see my daughter's bedroom.
I'm glad that was just a thing falling over. I don't know if that was an earthquake starting.
This is my daughter's bedroom, so you're gonna see a lot of like paintings and things like that. Yeah, so we'll take that back. So you know, like when you were recounting your development path, I mean, it's like it didn't sound like you had a lot of significant roadblocks. Are we missing anything there? Was there anything that you felt that was really hard to overcome, or was it kind of a natural?
I mostly think that Seth and I are 2 of the luckiest schmucks around, and you know, like we did take the initiative. And like, by the time other people were like, I wonder what I should do with my life, we've been writing at least a movie for 10 years. But roadblock wise, it was just like taking a gamble and going to LA and having no money when either of us did so, you know. But we were very fortunate. Like Seth's parents went down there with him. My parents didn't give me any money to go down there, but but they were they weren't very supportive, but they loved me. That's what matters. But yeah, it was really, I mean, it's the same thing, and this ties into the real story. It's money. It's the ability to afford to do it. Like if I wasn't from a situation where I could spend a summer in LA trying to become a writer, then I wouldn't have gotten to be a writer. I just had that fortune, and that's one of the reasons we started Real Start, is other people don't. And
right.
Everyone should be presented with these opportunities, and I was very fortunate. Like I often think of Amelia Wasserman, who's a good friend of mine, who put me in touch years ago with Eric, co-founder, and Eric volunteered on one of our films. And Amelia's father and mother, her father worked in advertising and her mother worked in writing a lot of Canadian children's stuff. And they actually gave me a ton of advice and like showed me that if you are passionate about this area, there's a lot of different jobs. And without those people in my life, I don't know if I would have understood how real it could be. So it was really key to just meet like two people who told me like, you can, if you really want to work in this field and you really pursue it, you can do it if you really want to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I do want to get more into Real Start, but before we get into that, what I wanted to like figure out is like, I mean, because like let's just talk about like you know the idea of two guys coming to LA, writing comedies, working their way up. I mean, so much has changed in the last couple decades. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like when you look back at like just the way the industry has shaped how the streamers have changed it, how many new voices and new talents are coming in. Like, do you think that a writing duo today can forge a similar path that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg did?
I think like there's going to be less high highs, so to speak. You know, like it'll be harder to get like really high up there, and by that I mean making like huge scopy massive things, but there's more chances for everybody. Like there's just more available. Like, will you have a show that runs for 7 years like Seinfeld? And they're like those things, I don't know if that's ever happening again, but there's just more opportunity. There's more places. There's more, like I was listening to this podcast Smartless, that's lovely, and they had Ted Sarandos on, who runs Netflix, and he was explaining how they've expanded to other territories and how like I don't remember, this was a few months ago in this podcast, but Korean viewership in America has increased 100%. And so like that changes the game. Suddenly, if you have a Korean specific content, and we all know Canada has done very well with some Korean specific content, not inclusive only to Korean people, but just Korean based and for everybody, it's just a game changer. Like the demographics of who's watching and how they're watching gives so many more people the opportunity. And of course, cell phones. It's just, you know, like me and Seth, when initially we were talking about Superbad, we were like, first things first, like, how are you going to afford all these cassette tapes? We got to buy like a lot of high tapes, and then we need to buy something to like load it into a computer because you need a special machine to do that. And then when my dad's camcorder worked with those things, and my dad's camcorder couldn't rewind well, so we were like, okay, I guess we can't rewind, and we'll rewind. But it was just like so complicated, and now you can just get your phone and do it.
Right.
And not to say it's easy, but pursuing it is so much more possible. Like you can give it a go in a way that used to not be available.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, but also like, okay, so I mean, you were talking about how like Netflix and streamers and stuff like that have kind of changed the game. I mean, what's interesting is like when you and Seth broke out, you know, it was positioned in this moment. It was pegged as part of this comedy renaissance, right? Like, and it was largely credited to Apatow, right? Like, you know, you think about like the 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Out, like they kind of popularized this R-rated comedy that also had that was sort of heartfelt, right? And that gave way to Superbad. But I feel like that moment has sort of passed in a way where you can't rely on that to be a theatrical box office success as much. And now it's like maybe belongs to the streamers. And I think like one example is Long Shot, which I thought was such a terrific comedy, but I don't feel like it did as well in theaters, but I do see it trending on Netflix right now.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on for a long time why Long Shot didn't work out in the box office, though it is a great movie and I freaking love it. My short answer to this is the best comedy or the biggest comedy of the last few years, and one of my absolute favorite is Thor Ragnarok. That's the biggest comedy now. It's a completely different ballgame. Like I just like our last like huge comedy. I mean, the biggest one we ever had financially was Neighbors, and I just don't know if that could happen again at this point. I'm not sure. Maybe it can. And then there's on the streamers, those things might absolutely destroy, but they'll never tell us. So it's like a little complicated. But I definitely agree that the landscape has changed. It's not the same as it was. There's also this other factor that like there's these waves that happen. Like American Pie kicked off the first one in my memory, which is like this R-rated wave where like suddenly people are like, "Ooh, I like these like hard R things that have emotion but are like really like dirty and funny in a way that like me and my friends are, and they're not restricted and just like let it go." And then it always like backlashes for like 10 years and it kind of becomes more like dramatic and it's like, let's not do this silly stuff. And then it kind of happens again. That's my personal theory. There's these comedic waves that come and go where it gets hard R for a while and then people kind of go away from that and come back to it. So I think we're not at a hard R peak right now, but it'll be back.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because it's like even like I mean, there's this whole conversation about how nobody can handle nudity and sex and stuff in any of our content anymore, right? In theaters and stuff, and so it's like so I'm waiting. I think I mean, we just had Fear Street drop on Netflix, and it's like, oh, you're thinking of a movie that throws back to Friday the 13th, and you imagine naked people having sex and stuff, but it's all very tame. And I guess that's the wave where it's like everything has to be very tame now. I don't know.
Yeah, we have some stuff coming up with an outrageous amount of nudity that I hope will kick off the next wave of extreme nudity in film.
Okay, sweet. Okay, we're gonna get back to that then. I mean, and there's also Paul Verhoeven's Benedetta. So the new Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen and the new Paul Verhoeven can go hand in hand in starting a new wave, I guess.
Anything where I mentioned alongside Paul Verhoeven is good by me.
Yeah. So I mean, like, look. But I mean, in terms of that changing landscape, when you talk about like the streaming stuff, I mean, is that what's facilitating then? Like, I mean, American Pickle went to HBO Max. You're doing a lot more television, maybe versus the theatrical feature, so to speak, right? So is that a whole new ballgame in terms of pitching? I mean, first of all, is it easier just to get great content out there in these new formats? And then how does that change the way you have to pitch these stories and stuff?
I mean, it's like crazy different from like Seth and I were like, Seth did Freaks and Geeks and Undeclared, and we did the Ali G show together. But then it was just like big mainstream movies for a long time. And this whole TV game is just it's exhilarating and extremely different. And from my perspective as a filmmaker mostly, and now a TV maker as well, the speed of it is crazy. Just like how fast it goes, how much is happening. So it's this crazy different game of quantity and quality. And like, we're pretty obsessive with maintaining what we consider quality. And so it's this never ending kind of like mad dash, but we have to maintain the quality that we would in our films. So it's a very different balancing act, but it's, as I said before, it's just like ripe with potential. Like in 4 years on Preacher, we did things that would have taken 30 years of us making movies to do, just content lengthwise. You know, we just get to say so much more and do so much more and work with so many more people. And that's probably the most exciting part for us, I think, and for everybody. It's just more people are working with more people, and more voices are being heard in more rooms and connecting with more different people. And I think it's like extremely exciting. There's just so much stuff coming, an impossible amount of stuff being made that I wish I could watch.
Well,
I have 2 kids, so I don't get to watch a lot of it.
Right. How old are your kids?
Almost 3 and almost 5.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So I wanted to pick at some of in terms of this changing landscape. I mean, you mentioned that you're a comic book fan and stuff, and how Thor Ragnarok is the new comedy. I wonder, as a comic book fan, first of all, do you feel a little jaded about how the whole industry is now comic book focused and stuff like that, or I mean, you're just
opposite? Dream come true.
Okay.
The Avengers, the Infinity War and Endgame are like the greatest things ever. I like couldn't be more excited. I love all the Marvel movies. I like some of the DC movies. I mean, Robert Kirkman's ascension in TV is just the awesomest. I love like everything he makes. I get to make some of it with him. Like I just couldn't. You can see I'm like starting to stutter. I get like fanboy because I am a fanboy with this stuff. Like me and my brother and Seth read comics and shared comics our whole childhood, and then I read them for most of my adult life, taking intermittent breaks because of family. But this comic renaissance is just the funnest thing to ever happen. And then the fact that we get to make The Boys is just the most over the top exciting thing ever. It's like, if after Endgame, everyone's like, we understand how comics work now. And then we just got to come out like so close to it and are just like riding that wave, and we get to be so topical, and it's just exhilarating to me.
Right. Well, then, okay. So the other part of the kind of landscape is, okay, so comic book like content is like now it's kind of reigning supreme. The other thing is social media, right? And how social media is changing the way I think movies are made. I mean, first of all, I think there's a lot of new talent now that's developing their skills on TikTok. You know what I mean? But it's like, so on the one hand, that's sort of shaping I think we're going to soon see how that's going to shape the way movies are made. But also, how does things that are trending shape the way movies are made? Like when you go to a pitch meeting, do you have to show them a hashtag and like, oh, look at how many impressions this thing got and stuff like that?
Sort of. You don't have to show them that, but you do have to, if you have a cast and they're like, so this is the cast of the show, they will throw all their social media numbers up there. And there's like a big like red X when it's like, this person doesn't have Twitter, this person doesn't have TikTok. And I've been in meetings where they straight up have like celebrity faces, 4 social media categories below them, and then like a dollar value. Wow. So it's becoming very scientific to them, even though the science doesn't seem to ring true all the time. But it is weird, and it changes things a lot. I don't think it like changes film, like the movies we make, that much, because you don't make a movie to be of the moment, because that's risque in general, because you don't know if the moment's going to be the same 18 months from when you start making the film, or 24 months or whatever. But with TV, there's a lot of ways to make it like highly reactive, especially in animated stuff. I mean, the South Park guys are the kings of doing it due to the way they animate. So TV and social media to me has like a deep relationship. And you know, just like, yeah, like every show we have has its own social media accounts, and they can all deal with the actors, and it kind of like bleeds out of the lines that we used to exist in. So yeah, it's very different, the social media and TV especially.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, even just looking at movies, I mean, you said like it's more TV is more reactive, but even looking at movies, it does feel like oftentimes movies are reacting to the conversations we're having on Twitter, right? Like to the political agendas and the progressive agendas and all that stuff.
For sure, yeah,
right. So like, I mean, there's still, I mean, and I wonder how that kind of plays into the meetings and stuff, right? Go like they pull up like, listen, let's look at this thread on Twitter. I mean, we just got our first movie based on a Twitter thread. Came out this summer, right? Zola, like
Zola. I didn't realize it came out. I was in a daze this summer. It came out.
Yeah, it just came out, right? So it's like
that's crazy.
So I'm just like, I mean, we do feel like we're in this kind of precipice, right? Like how that, and I mean, the thing about Zola is it's like, it's not just that it's a movie based on a Twitter thread, but that Twitter thread opened the door to who gets their voices out there, right? Like that's a Black sex worker who got her story out there through Twitter and then became a movie. I mean, we're on the edge of the precipice of something here, right? Like in terms of
the social media is Pandora's box, and good and bad. A lot of people are getting heard that shouldn't. A lot of people are getting heard that should. But the people who should get heard, it's really exciting, and it's like something that would have never happened without social media.
So, you know, like actually, Evan, talk to me about the Real Start program. I mean, you're a co-founder of that. How did that begin? What is that program about?
So we started it to educate, guide, and empower underrepresented youth to change their world through film. And it's about developing the next generation of diverse filmmakers and the crew and industry professionals. And we focus on 3 steps really towards addressing diversity and inclusion in the entertainment industry, which is by introducing people from underrepresented communities, youths, to career paths, because you can't pursue a job that you don't know exists. And the first step to pursuing it is knowing it exists, which I was fortunate to see in my youth. So our current program serves teens in LA and Toronto, and we bring them together. We choose a topic that they're interested in, one that focuses on a social issue that they feel passionate about. And then we bring in a writer who can kind of speak to that story and has some lived experience, and they work on it together. And then we, over the course of several months, bring in different industry professionals, directors, producers, but also hair and makeup. It's not just about the directing and the acting. We want them to see all the different jobs. We bring in camera operators, you name it. And then ultimately we shoot it in a 1-day live action shoot. And then we edit it and have a proper post-production process. And then we have a premiere. This year we pivoted to animation, obviously, because COVID ruined everything and we had no choice. And it went incredibly well. And now we have a virtual format that we can do all over Zoom that allows us to be much more nimble and bring in guest speakers with more ease. And we're really excited about that. And so now that we have this new animated virtual version as well, we're excited to move into the future and expand the project so we can reach out to more kids and more communities.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, like part of when I was looking at the Real Start website and looking at the program and everything, what was interesting to me is like, it culminates in this short film, and on the website it says like a short film that focuses on a social issue that the student is personally affected by, right? And I thought that was very fascinating, because you're baking this kind of social political awareness into the talent building process. So what like why bother with that?
I think like most good film and television has, like when people talk about their favorite shows, like people talk about The Wire, and it's like it says something about the society we live in, and not comparable per se, but like Superbad is about friendship and kindness and struggling with separation. And Superbad's not really like tackling the social issue, but it's still about like deep, meaningful things that happen to these people. And we just thought that when it came to like bringing a group together to do this, that we didn't want it to just be like one kid's story. We wanted it to be something that we could all contribute to, that they could all contribute to. And so a social issue just gave us like a lot of direction and helped us maintain some focus, and made sure that that there was a little weight to the shorts themselves. We started, our first few shorts were with younger kids, and they didn't have that same weight. They were about bullying and stuff like that. But as we started working with high school students, we realized we could say things that were deeper and darker and more interesting. Not to say they're all dark, but just to have that opportunity to really like go into something and dig a little deeper than maybe other high school projects allow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I guess the reason I'm bringing this up, like, I think it's so fascinating that it's kind of built into the program, this kind of social awareness, because like, it just feels like, I don't know if this is actually the case or it just feels this way on Twitter. It just feels like everyone's so much more socially engaged, right? Especially within the last year, everyone's more politically engaged, everyone's more aware. And it just feels like the new generation of filmmakers that are coming up and storytellers that are coming up, it seems to me they're more actively engaged. I don't know if you're seeing it the same way. I mean, you're in the industry and stuff, right? But it's like,
I mean, just what I was saying earlier about like Seth was the only person in the entire high school of like 1,200 people that I could find who was like, let's talk about movies. Like, I really love this stuff. What messages can we say? What stories do we have to tell? And now there's just so many more people who believe that they can do it, that they can actually like have their story told. And a lot of them are getting their stories told, and their stories are not stories we've been hearing. And it's just like uplifting to see this happening. And I know that like, like a lot of things feel a little dark for some people with the pandemic and economic downturn and all that. But there's just this through line that people are getting heard who weren't heard before. And it's to me very uplifting and makes me excited about the future.
Yeah. So do you think that political engagement then is a result of these kind of new voices that are coming? Because I mean, I think we're even noticing it in like, say, the media, even in CBC, like you're seeing how certain stories are shifting with this effort of bringing in new diverse talent and new types of voices from underrepresented communities. Do you think that having those voices in there is now just changing the narrative? And that's why we're seeing like conversations in movies, conversations on Twitter, like everything that's been happening?
Yeah, I mean, like taking an example within my own company, Point Grey, we had a movie we were working on that really like tackled some issues about race, and we had someone in our company who was like, as someone who is of this specific group of people, I do not think you should make this film. I think you guys are a little old and out of touch with this particular premise. And we sat down, and she was one of our assistants, and she convinced us not to make the movie. And that just like, I don't think would have happened before. And that's just like a minor example, we thought we were doing something that's really edgy, which is something we often do. And we realized, no, this one, the balance couldn't be struck right. And just to have somebody in our company who was young and felt comfortable, like saying to us, don't make this. I just don't think that would have happened 10 years ago. And I'm so glad it happened. And, it's not like we were going to make some terrible movie. It just wouldn't have been the fine balance that comedies that tackle issues needs to be. And that's just like one example in our life, but just all over it. People are just standing up for themselves and saying things and making things that they wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's amazing that like an assistant feels empowered enough to stand up and say that, right? To come out to you guys. And I wonder though, like, do you think that that's the case across the industry? Do you think that at this point, I'm seeing a lot of virtue signaling coming from a lot of studios and a lot of progressive messages and stuff, but I wonder what happens behind closed doors, right? Do they really empower some of these voices to speak up? Do you think they're ready to hear some of the more revolutionary voices, or is there still kind of stopgaps where they're just not ready for certain things yet? or certain?
I mean, I think I'm like shocked how ready they are for things. I think they were dragged, all these corporations are just dragged into it when they have to. And then eventually they're like, oh, wait, we can make money if we do this. And then they do it. But whatever, they're doing it. They're serious. Like the companies that I'm working with have very real policies that are making very real differences. And as much as I like to make fun of giant corporations, like they've been dragged into the future, and it seems like it's kind of happening. And like a lot of these giant corporations are they're tackling diversity with like serious restructuring that is going to make a serious difference, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like let's going back to sort of like, these new voices are entering the game. They're telling their stories, right? Like I think what's interesting, do you know Cameron Bailey, the director, the co-head of the Toronto Film Festival? So he once gave a speech about how like, a lot of people, they break through, their first film is usually something that's very close to home. It's something, they read about what they know. It's often a coming of age story. And for, so for you and Seth, that looks like Superbad. For someone like Dees Reese, that looks like Pariah, right? And so when you introduce these kind of these new voices, you get these new kind of stories, and oftentimes a lot of the stories from the people from marginalized communities, they feel a little more loaded, because if they're dealing with like Muslim, like discrimination and hate and stuff like that, right? And I think that's amazing. I don't know if you've noticed that as well, like especially within your program in terms of the story that. Sorry, you're seeing that in the Real Start program as well, or?
I mean, in the Real Start program, our whole thing initially was just like, let's find kids who have never had the opportunities that they should have been presented with. And we didn't have like a specific prerogative as to exactly what type of kids that would be. We just knew we wanted to find the kids who didn't have the opportunity. And it turns out that is like entirely populations of color. It's been Black and Latinx, Latina, Arabic and West Asian and South Asian. And their stories have like very much reflected those backgrounds. They've had to kind of, since they do it as a group, they do need to like come together and choose a specific focus. But yeah, especially the last few years, they have all been like very unique stories that I don't think you would have heard again 10 years ago if we were doing the exact same program. Or even, and if we did hear them, I don't know if they would have told them with the same amount of vigor and honesty that they are now.
But I mean, like, now, are you also seeing this in the industry then? Are you seeing this at Point Grey? Are you seeing these like different like the influx of new voices to tell these new stories, and we're going to get more of these new coming of age stories to develop new talent and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's it's not like overnight everything's different. Like the people at the top are still the people at the top, but it's like people like in the third and second positions are really changing, and like big studios, they're like creating properly diverse boards that are like now choosing projects that wouldn't have been selected. So I think that wave has begun, but like it hasn't fully happened yet, just because production takes a long time.
Yeah.
So I imagine in the years to come, we're going to see a lot of stuff that we otherwise wouldn't have. It's definitely been on the rise, but I think there's like a massive surge coming up. Well, I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, because here's like, because again, it's like, I see the positive shift, right? But I'm also wondering how protected these voices are. First of all, what kind of expectations are we putting on these new voices, right? Are we going to expect all these people of color to now like, okay, you have to tell this type of story, right? Like, what about the duo that just wants to tell us give us a sex comedy, so to speak, right? Like, is there still room for that in this industry, or is everyone is by being someone from a marginalized community, do you have to tell that story?
I think it's like a fine balance, as always. I have a friend who came up with an extremely good idea recently that is largely about a couple of color in Los Angeles. He's not a person of color, and so he teamed up with a producer who was, and they went and they sold it together. And if he proceeded without someone on board who represented the characters more, I don't think he would have sold that in a million years. And he did, because he did what he should have, which is found someone to team up with who could bring an authentic voice. So it's not that he can't write a story that isn't his own. It's not, writers create worlds, they create entire planets that don't exist. But you gotta, why wouldn't you bring in a voice to help you that can speak to the story you're telling more? And so, yeah, I think that's kind of like one of the shifts that's happening. And it's awesome. Like I have a few TV shows I've created recently, and we're like staffing up. And now when you before when you staff up, you're just like, who's the funniest writers out there? and there's like some diversity, but like people weren't like hyper focused on it, and now people are like, there's like number, like it has to be this. There's no wavering in either direction. It doesn't matter if there's a better writer here, because having a more complete spectrum of people will create the better product, not just the funniest guy in the room. And I've been in 2 writers' rooms over the last few months, and it's awesome. Like we get in these like crazy debates that I think wouldn't have been happening in the past. And it's especially good in writers' rooms where like there's a dome of protectiveness and we all kind of can just be very open. It's kind of thrilling to have this like more diverse group of people in a safe space, just like having crazy conversations about society and everything in between.
That's interesting, because it's like, okay, like I feel, because Seth was recently on a press tour for a book he wrote, right? Like for his book. Is that, by the way, the first thing he ever wrote on his own without you?
We've written a few movies without each other.
Okay.
I wrote a movie called Drill Bit Taylor way back in the day. I wrote Goon without him.
Okay.
I wrote a video game without him, but pretty much everything we've done together.
Goon, by the way, is my only connection to hockey. Like I haven't really been paying attention to the whole Habs thing that's going on right now. So don't tell Jay that. But
I won't.
But yeah, so I mean, when he was on his press tour, like promoting that book, I mean, he was talking about like, you know, these comedians who feel like they can't tell jokes anymore, everything's offensive, and you can't do comedy anymore because everyone's so precious and stuff. And I thought he had a very interesting, you know, take on that. He's like, well, no, like you're just whining, like you can't adapt. And I feel like what you're describing in terms of the writer's room is showing kind of like the potential that's there for comedy when you actually are more sensitive to a diversity of opinions and stuff like that, as opposed to it being like prohibitive. It sounds like more fruitful.
Oh yeah, I totally think it's more fruitful. I look at it the same way as like my partnership with Seth. People always ask like, oh, like, do you write better together or alone? And we 95% of the time write every word together, because every time I'm like, what if we did this? And he's like, what if we did that? If he wasn't there, that wouldn't have happened. And now that I've been in these writer rooms, you know, we'll be like, what if this happens? And then someone will be like, that type of person would never do that. We'll be like, go on, explain. And then they explain, and then you learn something you didn't know. And then the whole product is more realistic and a better built ship because of it. It's just a better conversation, and writing is conversations, at least when you're not writing alone. And yeah, I find it very exciting and more productive.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I guess there's also like, I mean, because when did that shift happen for you guys, right? To open it up some more, right? Because I mean, I'm sure you could look back at some of your old comedy and be like, okay, well, that was offensive and we wouldn't have done it that way. Even in Superbad, right?
Like, Superbad has a few things that I'm like straight up embarrassed by. Like, you know, things don't age well sometimes, and especially like if you work in comedy and you make hard R comedy, like some of your stuff is not going to age well. And if you didn't realize that, you're crazy. Like, you know, like the South Park guys have said some stuff that if we look back on it is probably just absolutely crazy. Like I rewatched Team America recently, and like it has some wild stuff, but like it was made for a time, you know, like I think when things were made needs to be kept in mind, but also like you can't pretend it didn't become offensive when it did. And so I think I align with Seth on that, you know, like if someone said, you said some stuff in Superbad that was offensive. Yes, for sure. And but you know, at the time, you know, I wasn't in total control and things were different and blah, 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 blah. But like, definitely there's just offensive stuff that artists will look back on. And I don't know if they have to be ashamed of it, but they have to acknowledge that it is no longer what it was.
So, you know, like, so bring it back to kind of the new voices and how this industry, how they're kind of changing this industry and shaping the conversations and stuff. I wonder if you think that, I mean, I guess what makes me worried, so to speak, about this industry is like we're in this moment where the social causes feel trendy. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like you got influencers. It's like, oh, like, you know, like they're jumping on the hashtags. It helps with their brands. Same with celebrities. Like it all seems very trendy to jump on these causes. And that environment, I think, would nurture young, proactive voices to feel safe to speak out about issues that concern them. And I wonder how safe they are. Like, when is there a point where like they think it's safe to say this thing about this issue, whether it's Israel, Palestine, whether it's Disney collaborating with military stuff, and then they're not going to realize that, oh, people will let you say what you're saying, but behind closed doors, the financiers are going to back away, so to speak, right? Or like you're going to get silently.
I can certainly see that happening. I think like in the moment, in my experience on the ground floor, people are really afraid to say the wrong thing. And so like the power for a lot of people is currently in the hands of the people rising up through the ranks. But for sure, there's definitely some people who are going to say something and people are like, yeah, great, sure, say whatever you want. And then the corporate whip will come down on them or something like that. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, in at least the projects I'm working on, it feels like the creative people, especially the diverse creative voices, are really being respected in a way that is unprecedented and does feel protected, at least on the projects I'm working on currently. But yeah, what you're saying sounds like a very, very real possibility that surely is happening somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm sure I got enough shows. I'm sure I'll find out about it on one of them someday and have to deal with it. Terrible mess of some nature.
it's interesting that you're seeing it the other way around, right? Where like the voices coming up are empowered, right? Because like the thing is, the situation I'm talking about, we would never hear about. We would never find out about it, right? Like they will trumpet when they're empowering these voices, right? Like they'll wear that on their sleeves and stuff. But the opposite situation, you'll never know that they never got this job for that reason, right? With that this financier didn't want to work with them because of this thing they said back then, right? So it's like, and I guess I'm always wary because it's like the people who are the most outspoken, they change things for everybody for the better. But at the same time, they often are the ones that are going to get punished. And I don't know. So I mean, but I take it that you haven't really witnessed that.
I haven't personally witnessed it. It feels like this just like wave coming through society has really empowered a lot of people in my industry to like securely speak their minds in ways that they wouldn't have before. The Hollywood system just seems to have embraced these changes in a way that I would not expect from massive corporations. So, you know, maybe I'm naive and the other shoe's going to drop any minute now, but it's feeling pretty good.
Even for you though, because you guys touch on some touchy issues, right? Like, what was the worst kind of pushback you got for some of the stuff you've put into your movies?
I mean, the North Korea thing wasn't.
That was a whole thing.
I don't know if that counts. I think we've been pretty fortunate to avoid too much pushback because number one, we're very quick to admit that a joke aged poorly. Like we're not afraid to, you know, like when you work in comedy, like you're used to being embarrassed a lot. Like there's just embarrassing things. Like I know people like look at celebrities and they're like, "Whoa, what a fabulous life!" But like the things I've seen celebrities have to do on set are just so embarrassing, and they're just so like I'm just used to admitting faults, and so is Seth. But also, I think the type of comedy we made kind of makes people maybe judge us a little less harshly. Like I feel like again, the South Park guys and other like hard R comedians like have done things in some of their work that I think some people could go after them for in like a cancel culture kind of way, but they don't because they kind of understand that like, you know, they're working in a edgy comedic world and they're doing their best and they're trying to be topical. I don't know. This one, I can't unpack this one on my own. It's so complicated. There's just, I don't know the equation to why some people just get the ire of the public over some others. I mean, some people deserve it because they're awful, but it's a mixed bag. I think maybe it's just like if at the end of the day you're like taking advantage of people, that's when it really like irks people the most. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, you mentioned cancel culture, right? And I think, I mean, again, like going back to what, you know, with those comedians who feel like, oh, like we can't say anything now, like, you know, cancel culture is going to get us and stuff, right? And I just feel like, you know, coming from your camp, you seem to know how to just, it's not that, like, you seem to understand that it's not cancel culture, it's just rolling with an evolution, so to speak. And you know, like, but even part of that, I mean, again, Seth, I don't know if I'm taking this out of the quote out of context, but I mean, even talked about like, you know, what working with James Franco, it's like, well, maybe that's not the thing to do right now, right? It's like we got to like kind of get over this hump in terms of like the accusations that are being lodged against him and stuff. I mean, I just feel like there's something about like the accountability you guys are taking on. Like there's a way to roll with it, that you understand that this is an evolution and we can just grow from these things as opposed to feeling like you're getting canceled out.
Yeah, totally. And I think like some people react, like I think like some people, especially like on the far right, react really harshly to these changes because they're like, whoa, like that one was wrong, and that one was wrong. That person should have been canceled. And it's like, yeah, maybe this and that, but like in the grand scheme of things, like there's some pretty important social movements occurring, and people want to like focus on like the singular thing they disagree with. And like I disagree with some things here and some things there, but in general, like I think what's happening in society with diversity is remarkable. And I think like the light being shed on like economic issues, I personally am passionate about like universal basic income. Makes a lot of sense to me. It's called progress for a reason, and you have to roll with it. Otherwise you will become a problem, even if you're not actively being a problem. So I hope that we can keep evolving enough to not become jerks.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I mean, because I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old as well. So when you talk about like, oh, yeah, I definitely feel over the hill as well. Like I'm not with it in terms of conversations, but you're gonna realize as soon enough when your kids are on TikTok and stuff, that's gonna be your avenue. You're gonna learn from them in terms of like how to keep up with the kids and stuff. You know, like. So I mean, but in terms of keeping up with things, like I mean, yeah, talk to me about your new projects. Talk to me about I mean, I read about the Scotty Bowers thing, and I'm so excited about that. Is that still happening? And like what's going on here?
Yeah, Scotty Bowers, based on the book Full Service, still happening. That's something we're super passionate about. It's about a gas station in the 50s that had a gentleman named Scotty Bowers who catered to people that were homosexual for like hookups. And it's just like a universe that obviously like the 1950s gay scene is not something I'm very familiar with, nor did I live through. And the opportunity to like go down, I'm a big history nerd, the opportunity to like go down this like Hollywood history of like a part of culture that like I'm not intimately familiar with is super fascinating. So that's like really exciting for us. And then we're gonna try to make it like a very fun film, working with Luca on it, who's the director. But yeah, that one's thrilling, and we're just writing that. And then Seth and I have been writing an original movie that I can't reveal any information about, but it's for him to star in and us to direct, which has been a little while since we've done that. And then just working on The Boys and Black Monday a lot. We have Sausage Party animated TV show coming up. Santa Inc. is a project we have with HBO Max. It's really exciting. It's like a claymation show about the North Pole. I'm surely forgetting some things, but those are our major film things I can think of right now.
Yeah, my kids are going to be very excited about the Sausage Party animated series. I had no idea you guys were that's continuing. You know,
literally the day after the movie came out, we were like, "How do we keep doing this?" Like, we
right.
want it to be like our South Park. We want to make it forever. We are passionate about it, and it's also, you know, going to like talking about social causes. Like as silly as it may sound to some people who saw Sausage Party, which has a wild 50% on Rotten Tomato. You know, half the people loved it and half the people just absolutely hate it. But it's our chance to like have social commentary in like a continuous manner. And I won't reveal much, but it's all about kind of society. It's an exciting arena to play in.
That all sounds amazing. So you know what, Evan, thank you for having this conversation. We will wrap it up here. Do you have any kind of parting words for the audience from the Future Film Showcase?
If you want to be a filmmaker, go for it. You know, like make something on your phone, make something with your friends, get a job anywhere that is filmed. Just look into it. There's just so much potential, and there's so many different jobs. There's so many different things for different types of people. I just think that it's a world that people need to tap into more, and they want to, and that they should get out there and go for it.
All right, thank you so much, Evan. And I will invite back Zareen to say our goodbyes. Thank you, Future Film Showcase, once again for having us, and CBC Gem for sponsoring the event.
Perfect. What a great conversation. Thank you again to Evan and Rad for being here today on behalf of Future Film Showcase. Once again, this program will be available on our website at fofs.ca and on our YouTube channel. And again, you can check out any of the other programs we have at fofs.ca/industry. Thanks again to both of you, and I hope everyone has a good night.
Thanks.